Okay guys, so my recent videos talking about how Lawrence Krauss is essentially pushing supernatural miracles with his theory about quantum fluctuations in which the universe can pop out into existence from nothing without a prior cause, which is about as hocus pocus a concept as I've ever fucking heard of, has gotten the attention of a lot of atheists, including one atheist YouTuber by the name of Logicked, because he's logicking your ass. And he did a 40-minute video. The response from atheists has been quite fascinating. They really gotten passionate about my video on this, and I wonder why. It's interesting. Maybe we'll talk about that, but it's a 40-minute long video. I don't know if I can sit through 40 minutes of this. I don't really feel like I have the patience to do it. However, I did listen to the first few minutes, and from the very get-go, he said something which is exactly the point of my original videos. I left a very lengthy comment, and I think it sums up my refutation to one of his original points. So let's take a look at what I wrote here. I'm going to read it out loud to you because it basically succinctly sums it up. So I go, I'm technically using the term miracle, ironically, to troll atheist physicalists, who used to be called materialists, because technically if a phenomena is part of the universe, then it's considered natural, not supernatural, miracle, hocus pocus, whatever you want to call it. The reason I use it, somewhat ironically, is because mechanistic causality had always been a key means through which physicalists debunked supernatural fraud. I.e., if someone claims they can cure the blind with just the power of their mind, then physicalists would demand mechanistic causal proof, observable mechanistic causal proof. Otherwise, it's considered fraud, supernatural, or pending a mechanistic explanation. So this mechanistic causality model, which used to be called materialism, now it's called physicalism, though I think technically the term physicalism basically just means if the scientists say it's true, then it's part of our worldview. That's basically what it comes down to, even if it's something from nothing without a prior cause, which is about as hocus pocus an idea. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying the idea is wrong. I'm not saying it's inaccurate. I'm saying that it's a wild theory that violates any preconceptions we had about a purely material reality. So let's continue. And yet now, when someone like Lawrence Krauss poses what he calls a, quote, plausible theory on the origins of the universe, and he says it all arose spontaneously from nothing without a prior cause, that violates the mechanistic causal model of our reality because it is causeless. There is no causal mechanism behind it. It essentially, poof! Okay? You guys grasping what the true magnitude of what the quantum fluctuation theory is purporting here? Essentially, poof, pops out of nothing without an observable / detectable prior causal mechanism. And according to Krauss's book, A Universe from Nothing, which I read years ago, it's not like he's suggesting in the theory that we may find an underlying cause at some point, though I'm sure Krauss is open-minded to that. He's saying the process literally works without prior causation. That's the way it works. It's not, God of the gaps type deal where we haven't figured out what's going on in the quantum fluctuation, that maybe one day we'll figure out the causal mechanism. Krauss is saying that that's how it works. It doesn't need a prior cause. It's not that we haven't found the cause yet. It's that that's how it works. It doesn't need a cause. It can just happen without a prior cause. That's wild, bro. That violates everything I ever understood about how we determine between the supernatural and the natural. Something without a cause? Fundamentally without a cause? Yeah, man, that's about as close to a miracle, if you want to call it that, as I could ever think of. So let's continue. His book, Universe of Nothing, which I read years ago, it's not like he's suggesting in the theory that we may find an underlying cause at some point, though I'm sure he's open-minded to that. He's saying the process literally works without prior causation. You may not call this a miracle, and it's technically not supernatural, though according to Google, there are two varying definitions of supernatural. That which is, quote, beyond scientific understanding, or the laws of nature. In which case, the beyond the laws of nature version of the definition would, by definition, mean that, quote, supernatural is physically impossible because it's beyond the laws of nature. You may not call a universe without prior causation miraculous or supernatural, but it absolutely goes against the mainstream tradition I've seen of atheist physicalists, or the older term materialists, using mechanistic causality as a means of debunking the impossibility, quote, impossibility of miracles and the supernatural. Thus, because Krauss's book promotes a theory that violates mechanistic causality, I think it's an ironic troll. That's right, I think it's an ironic troll to say he's pushing supernatural miracles, which is what I did in my videos. Now, is a universe from nothing without a prior cause that causes it to exist a, quote, miracle? Let me read that sentence again. Is a universe from nothing without a prior cause that causes the universe to exist, is that a, quote, miracle? Well, it's the closest fucking thing I can think of, because a causeless reality in which mechanistic physical processes occur from a void of nothingness and not preceded by a cause is about as close to a miracle as I can think of. And I know you'll say, quote, well, if it's part of reality, then by definition it's not a miracle. That doesn't change the fact that a causeless universe from nothing is an outlandish, wild idea, not saying it's false, that throws causality, and I also think predeterminism, out the goddamn window. Which should be pretty obvious. I mean, Krauss consistently uses the term spontaneous to describe the quantum fluctuation process that he's talking about. Spontaneous means, especially in the context of his book, he's talking about without a prior cause. It does not require a cause before it. I mean, truly spontaneous. I mean, what could be more spontaneous than something that isn't puppeted by the cause and effect causality of mechanisms? So yeah, I would say that we have this old Newtonian model worldview of our universe, which is sort of a clockwork universe where everything is on a predetermined path, physical matter bouncing around, cause and effect, causality, bouncing around to a predetermined destiny, because we're just billiard balls in the universe. We're just particles of matter bound by laws of nature, and we have no free will, we have no control. We're just being bounced around, puppeted around by forces beyond our control. It's a predeterministic path. Very much opposite of that, which I remember reading this in Krauss's book probably 2 or 3 years ago, A Universe from Nothing. He talks about spontaneity, spontaneous. It doesn't need a prior cause. That's baffling. That's mind-blowing. Now, here's where the thing gets real. You know, the reaction that I've gotten from atheists is interesting. I've done a lot of videos on consciousness and, you know, the quirkiness of our reality and, you know, a lot of the, you know, some quantum physics things that are, you know, multiverse, multi-universes and all that stuff, infinite dimensions, a lot of these sort of mainstream mathematical theories about our universe. And I've never gotten the reaction from atheists that I'm getting now. They are just like, really? Like, this is really... They feel very much compelled to do something about this, and I think there's a reason for this. You know, Krauss's book, A Universe from Nothing, the foreword for the book, I think it was a foreword, might have been like an epilogue, I'm pretty sure it was a foreword for his book, was written by Richard Dawkins. Now, Krauss and Dawkins are guys that have, for many years, if you guys didn't know, they've debated you know, theists, religious theists, such as William Lane Craig. Now, I'm not a Christian, and I don't identify with any religion, and I could even sympathize with the atheist view that our reality, or rather, not that our reality, but that most religions are bullshit. I get that. I get that. I'm not a Christian, and if anyone thought that. But they were debating people like William Lane Craig, who used an interesting argument to try to debunk the materialist or physicalist worldview. And the argument was, I think it was called the ontological argument. I'm not exactly sure the name, but it's basically a causality argument. He basically puts forward the idea that how can we live in a purely mechanistic, causal reality if our entire universe, if bound by these principles, where do you get the original cause of the universe? Because every time you think you found an original cause for our universe, the mechanistic causal model of our reality would mandate that there had to have been a prior cause before that, and a prior cause before that, and a prior cause before that, and on, ad infinitum, because that's exactly what the rule set of the mechanistic causal worldview, call it materialism, call it physicalism, mandates. It mandates that every cause had a prior cause to cause it. So I think, you know what, I think that, you know, a universe from nothing, a convenient book that came along with this interesting theory that Krauss says is plausible but not really proven 100%. I think they had to get a good counter argument for some of these theists who were really providing decent arguments. And a lot of these theists, they weren't saying, oh, Jesus was real, so there, you're wrong, atheist. They weren't saying that. They were taking the logic of the materialist model of reality and flipping it onto its head and saying, there's an inconsistency in your logic. How do you get something from nothing? The very mandate that there has to be a cause for everything prior is inconsistent, because you technically can never have an original cause, because it would literally go on for eternity. So it's interesting that the causality worldview that says everything must have a prior cause in order for it to be a functioning part of our reality, not just supernatural fraud or miracle, fake miracle bullshit, it had to have a prior cause. But you can never have an original cause, because every cause has to have a cause before it. So then Lawrence Krauss comes out, a universe of nothing, this fascinating idea of quantum fluctuations that violates causality. Hey, theists who are using the ontological argument, if that's what it's even called, I forgot the name of it. Hey, theists, you think you have good arguments? Well, guess what? We don't need causality. You know, that mechanistic causality we've always used to debunk, you know, miracles and supernatural claims, you know, the infamous James Randi, the famous James Randi. We don't need him. We don't need causality. We don't need any of that. Because we don't need causality anymore, because the universe just poof, pops out from nothing with no prior cause. So I think this is a bit of a cosmic cop-out that Krauss is using. And I think atheists are clinging to, because they realize there's a hole in their materialist, call it physicalist, model of reality. And I think that's why people are so triggered by my recent videos. Now, I'm not sure if there are copyright claims, but he used my video, so he didn't get my permission, so I don't care. You can use it if you want to. So I'm going to go ahead and play this video. I'm assuming there are no copyright issues. We're going to listen to a little bit of it, as much as I can tolerate. The first 3 minutes, I basically refuted, you know, the key points anyways. And we're going to listen for a while. I haven't actually heard what he's about to say. So let's listen for a little bit, and let us see what he has to say.
Violating energy conservation, because there is no energy.
Once you realize the total energy of the universe can be zero, then the possibility that it comes from nothing becomes plausible. Because if it doesn't, you may need a deity to create everything. But it turns out you can create 100 billion galaxies, each containing 100 billion stars, without violating energy conservation.
He's very careful to make sure to point out that we don't know that this is what
I never said that he wasn't open-minded to alternative possibilities. I never said that. I said that according to what he calls a plausible theory, which he writes about in his book, that's what he's talking about in the book, in the podcast. So is Lawrence Krauss open-minded to other possibilities? I'm sure he is. In fact, in one of my other videos, I actually said, I'm sure he's open-minded to other possibilities. Lawrence Krauss is basically pushing miracles. He's not saying, oh, we might figure it out one day. Maybe there is a mechanistic cause for how the universe arose, but we just haven't found it yet. I mean, I'm sure he's open to that possibility, but he says that he believes it's plausible that our universe arose spontaneously from nothing with no prior cause. I mean, I'm sure he's open to that possibility, but it's what he's pushing on the podcast, it's what he's pushing in his book. So that's sort of irrelevant. We all know that he's open to other possibilities. I never denied that. I even mentioned it in an earlier video, before I even saw your video. So that's irrelevant.
But just that it's plausible based on currently known physics.
Yeah, we know, plausible, yes, we know.
It's amazing that that's possible. Now, can we prove that that happened? No. But everything we can point to makes it...
But I wrote an entire book about it. You see my point? Of course he's open to other things. So you trying to say, oh, maybe you edited out of context and you didn't throw in the fact that he's open to other possibilities. No, he wrote a whole book about it. I'm refuting his book. I'm refuting his claims in the podcast. Okay?
plausible.
So out the window goes your insistence that Krauss says anything about...
No, he just wrote a whole book about it. Are you being this fucking silly?
...what the universe is. Sorry, dude, but saying it's plausible based on known physics, but we have no idea if it's actually true, does not mean the same thing as this is what happened.
I'm well aware of that. Again, he wrote a whole book about it. He pushes it on his podcast. It's a big part of his career. It's a big part of what he does. Is he open to other possibilities? Of course he is. I said that. Obviously, I never said he was conclusive. And in fact, in a prior video, like I already said, I already pointed out that he's open-minded to other possibilities. So this is pointless, irrelevant garbage. Let's get to the point. Hopefully he gets to it.
It doesn't even mean the same thing as this is the only idea we have. There's plenty of other ideas. So no, Krauss does not admit, or in fact even state,
no, he just wrote an entire book about it. Come on, bro.
anything about how the universe came into existence, let alone call it a miracle.
He wrote a whole book about it. Stop playing games.
And then he goes on to ask what a universe would look like today if it arose spontaneously from nothing based solely on known or plausible laws of physics. So in other words, he shoots down any claim that this is supernatural, and thus any claim that it's miraculous, because if it's based on known laws of physics, which are simply a description of how the natural world works, then it's by definition not supernatural.
Of course, right. This is the cosmic bait and switch that the atheists are doing now. The universe violates causality? Oh, well, that's fine. We don't need causality. We don't need mechanistic causal processes to explain the mechanisms of our Newtonian worldview of our reality. We don't need any of that. We don't need causality. We just throw it out the window. Because anything, as long as the scientists say is true, that's part of reality. And I'm saying what I said for the first 13 fucking minutes of this video. That this idea that a universe can come from nothing without a prior cause violates the materialism worldview. It violates what I've always thought a lot of atheists would use this model, this mechanistic causal model, to debunk what they claim was supernatural or miraculous fraud. And now we live in a hocus-pocus universe where things can pop into existence without a prior cause. There goes the whole mechanistic material model down the toilet.
Mind-blowing, sure. Strange seeming to someone on Earth with our limited perspective and our limited understanding. But that's not the same thing as supernatural.
What would a universe look like today that was created, that arose spontaneously from nothing 13.8 billion years ago, just by known laws of physics, or at least plausible laws of physics?
And he says that a universe that arose from nothing based on known laws of physics would look just like the universe we live in, which is why the idea is plausible.
What would it look like today if that was the requirement? And the answer is it would look just like the universe in which we live in.
And then, once again, he takes great care to point out...
What's the point in that? I don't even see the point. We're not talking about whether or not the universe would look the way it does. We're talking about violating causal mechanistic worldviews, the causality, the mechanistic causality. That's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about anything else.
That we don't know that this is what happened.
And again, I never denied that he ever said that he does not know. Again, I've done it already.
But that it's just a plausible idea. It's not impossible, nor does it require a revolution in our understanding of physics. And since it's all perfectly natural, based on known physics, it doesn't require anything supernatural to make it plausible.
Now, does that prove that that's what happened? No, but it makes it plausible. And it makes it plausible without supernatural shenanigans.
And then, in classic Krauss fashion, he points out that if you can get rid of God, it's a good thing. Most likely because God did it is just not a compelling theory of anything.
Yeah, but you know what is compelling? Nothing did it! Oh, God did it. That's not compelling. But the universe arising without a prior cause to cause it, that's just A-okay. You see what I'm saying, bro? Look, I'm with you, man. Let's not do God of the gaps bullshit, man. Let's not insert God where we don't know things. But this idea that a universe from nothing without a prior cause isn't just a total monkey wrench in the mechanistic causal model, let's not pretend that this isn't some wild this is some wild stuff that's going on right now. It violates the mechanistic causal model.
Since God, being undemonstrated and totally unexplained, but rather the explanatory...
You want to know what else is undemonstrated and totally unexplained? A universe without a prior cause. Because by definition, if it had no prior cause, it can't be fucking explained. Not mechanistically anyway, not the way science has always tried to explain things. There's no prior cause. From nothing, spontaneously, no prior cause, the entire universe. What else do I gotta say, man?
Equivalent of a shrug can't possibly function as a useful explanation for anything.
And I would say that Krauss's quantum fluctuations is essentially a shrug.
And any time you can get rid of God, it's a good thing.
And then, having not understood any of this, Joe Rogan asks if something out of nothing is actually supernatural.
Actually, Joe's not that dumb in this case. Joe Rogan intuitively understood that for decades now, the mainstream atheist, materialist, physicalist, whatever the fuck you want to call it, always used the mechanistic causal worldview to distinguish between the supernatural, miraculous, whatever you want to call it, and what is objectively, physically true in our reality. And Joe Rogan understood, wait a minute, but you're saying something from nothing? You're saying something without a prior cause? I mean, by definition, you could technically never explain how the universe came to be in Krauss's quantum fluctuations theory. Because, by definition, if there's no prior cause, there's no mechanism to observe. Comprende? So Joe Rogan actually intuited quite well what was going on there.
Shenanigans.
But isn't something out of nothing supernatural shenanigans?
No!
And apparently you didn't understand any of this either, since you severely misrepresented the entire conversation, as is going to become abundantly clear as we proceed. And so instead of trying to understand what Krauss was actually saying, you just decided to simply cut most of it out, and then instead make a video about Joe Rogan's ignorant question. And I don't mean that as an insult to Joe.
Let's see if you watched my other video, where I simply rant, because the one you're talking about at the beginning of this video is where I rant. Just rant. Okay, I wasn't trying to give a logical explanation for where I was coming from, just ranting. Let's see if at any point in your 40-minute video, which I doubt I can make it through, let's see if it, because I've already debunked everything that needs to be debunked. Because we're not talking about all this fluffy nonsense. We're talking about causality and the quantum fluctuations. Let's see if you refer to my other video where I actually provide my logical basis for what I'm saying.
I mean, he seems like a nice guy who tries to understand stuff, and everybody's ignorant about most things. There's nothing wrong with honest ignorance. Anyway, let's clear up the rest of the conversation before we move ahead here. So, Krauss then uses the example of a photon being emitted from an atom spontaneously transitioning to a lower energy state, and how this means photons are coming from nothing when you turn on a light bulb, as a more relatable example of the sort of creation from nothing that he's referring to with regard to the universe.
They're spontaneously created because there's no cause for any of them. Each atom spontaneously decays into a different level because quantum mechanics says that these things can happen spontaneously. And when it does, a photon is created from nothing.
And finally, he explains why causality would probably have no applicability before the universe anyway, at least if our universe is all there is, which, as he points out, not everyone considers likely anymore. But if it is, then space-time began with the universe. And so there was no before the universe. There was no time. And without time, the notion of cause and effect makes no sense.
And if there's no before, then all of our notions of causality go out the window, because we all depend on before and after to decide causes and effects.
Right.
But if there was no before, then we have to change our notions of a cause and effect. And that's awful, but hey, that's what we call learning.
That's all I'm gonna...
And that's funny. Isn't it funny that Krauss calls it awful? Indeed, you want to know why it's awful? For the same reason that Joe Rogan considered what Krauss was saying to be supernatural. Because Krauss knows it's awful because we have to throw out the window an old way of looking at the world that might have been wrong. And what was that? Mechanistic causality. And whether or not there was time existent before the Big Bang isn't my point. A universe without a prior cause, whether you think there was no time before, or there was time before, or no time before, and thus you shouldn't ask questions about causality, that's not the point. The point is that even if you can't ask the question, the universe would still have had to have popped into existence without a prior cause. If there was no prior cause, that violates causality. And yes, as Krauss puts it, that's awful. Why does he call it awful? Because it goes against everything that the mainstream scientific, materialist, physicalist model, whatever you want to call it, has believed for many, many, many years now. And you have to throw it out the window. But throwing causality out the window, as I said in my original comment, is throwing out the entire mechanistic causal process through which you can distinguish between things that are objectively, empirically real in our reality and those which are not. He called it awful because it has to be thrown out because it was an old scientific model. And that's great that Krauss is saying that that's learning. Great, throw it out. That's a great thing because it shows true scientific empiricism. My point is that throwing causality out the window kind of throws a big monkey wrench in the old Newtonian, materialistic, predeterministic worldview.
Well, I'm going to review from the Krauss-Rogan discussion. Now, let's see what else you have to say, and I'm sure we'll refer back to the reality of that conversation quite often here.
He basically admitted, a scientist admitted, that our universe is a miracle.
Not even remotely, like I said. Joe Rogan said he thought that what Krauss said sounded supernatural, but we're not concerned with...
Okay, here's the thing. In my video that he's reviewing, I purposely said that I'm not going to provide a logical basis. I'm just going to rant from emotions.
That our universe is a miracle. Because, and I know now I have to get technical, I wanted to just be passionate and rant. In fact, you know what? I'm just going to be passionate. I'm not going to supply the scientific background for my claim that our universe is a miracle in this video. But I will do it in another video, which I'll put a link right up here if you want to get the scientific reasoning. For now, I'm just going to fucking rant.
So it's kind of pointless for him to even touch on this video if he's not referring to the one where I provide the logical basis. So we're going to skim through this and we're going to see if at any point he actually references the other video. It's a 40-minute long video he's done. So I think at some point, maybe in here, he might have fit that in. So let's keep going. Let's see if he actually did that. Because arguing my admitted emotional video is pointless when I state that I did a logic-based video where I provided more grounded reasoning behind what I'm trying to say. Let's go.
Some asshole said it, I don't really care. Because not only theistic arguments.
Miracle.
Absolutely not. And every indication is that it does. Of the universe, but a whole religion frenetic activity, if it's the same thing, no matter what it is, eating those, creating what, as you do say some new things there, but you're wheeling in voice cracks.
Double rainbow. Oh my God.
I asked because I glanced at your other video on this subject while I was working on this one.
There he goes.
You talk a little bit of shit about it.
He just said it. He glanced. Look, we're at 36 minutes into the video. Only about 3 minutes left in his video. And he says that he glanced at my other video. Really? The one where I said that I'm actually providing the grounded reason, logical argument for it? So you focus on the one where I openly, admittedly state in the video, this is pure emotions, I'm just going to rant. If you want the logical background, click on this video. Instead of focusing on that video, you focus on the one where I rant emotionally. That's kind of disingenuous, don't you think? So you glanced at the other video. Let's see what you concluded.
Verse by God on the basis that that's not exciting too. I asked because I glanced at your other video on this subject while I was working on this one, and you talk a little bit of shit about atheists there as if you're not one yourself.
Let's give atheists the credit they deserve.
Which I guess isn't surprising considering how emotionally invested and intellectually uninvested you are in the idea
childish
of miracles.
irrelevancies. Am I an atheist? Well, I certainly don't believe in any of the mainstream religions. Well, I find Buddhism and non-duality worldviews, Taoism, I find a lot of those worldviews to be interesting. Sam Harris, he says that there's a lot of interesting stuff to take from Buddhist philosophies, Buddhist religions. Doesn't mean he's a Buddhist. So I don't identify with any religion. Do I think there's a God? I have no idea.
I don't know. You're kind of confusing is all I'm saying. I'm not sure if I'll take a look at your other video.
But that's the thing with the pseudo-intellectual atheists. It's like you're either religious or you're not. Well, what if you're just an open-minded skeptic?
How emotionally invested and intellectually uninvested you are in the idea of miracles. I don't know. You're kind of confusing is all I'm saying. I'm not sure if I'll take a look at your other video, because you do say some new things there, but you also repeat yourself an awful lot.
I do say some new things there. Well, that's the video you should have focused on, instead of emotional rant that I admit was an emotional rant. Anyway, so that's basically the end of his video. So again, I think I've made my point. We're about 30 minutes in. I think I've made my point more than enough. This is the interesting thing. And again, I'm not going to restate the first 13 minutes of the comment that I read. That pretty much sums it up. But again, thank you guys for watching. Be sure to check out some of my intelligence does not equal regurgitation t-shirts. Piss off your pseudo-scientific, quote, atheist friends who think they know everything because they mindlessly regurgitate scientific consensus. Intelligence does not equal regurgitation t-shirts. Check them out. I'll put the link right here on screen. Take care, guys. Fight back against YouTube censorship by supporting me on Patreon. You'll also get access to exclusive, never-before-seen videos and other perks like monthly Google Hangouts with me, free books and t-shirts, and more.